then Jason.
Thank you, Bushra. Good morning, everyone. I'm Smita Pishikant. I'm the SRO Program Manager, accountable for the delivery up to M10. And I'm going to use the next few minutes to quickly intro this next section, 26 weeks to go live. It's a great place to be, as Helen said very enthusiastically, and Melissa with her optimism highlighted we are really in a good place. However, we are also very conscious there's a lot of hurdles to pass through. None of this unsurmountable, but something we're very, very conscious about. And as is with every program, as they say about the analogy of flights, where they talk about takeoffs and landings being the most crucial part. Normally, in most programs, you've got a landing and a short runway, a 3-month ELS period, and then we always here. We've got a rather different challenge. We've got 18 months to go through. So the next 26 weeks really, really matters. We've got to make sure it sticks. We've got to make sure we've got the processes that actually work for us. And we've got 26 weeks to make it all happen. As I think Helen spoke about and Keith spoke about, one of the hurdles we've got is service management. And you all know we are working really, really hard to work this through. There are lots of energy that's going in from the programme and all the relevant central parties to make it happen. And that is our commitment to you. But as a programme, we are committed to get this done. However, we can't get it done by ourselves. We need all of you. And as we work through in the last 4 years, through design, through testing, we can do this together and we can do this collaboratively. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Jason, who's going to talk through everything we're putting in place and everything we need from you to make it happen. Thank you,
Jason. Thank you, Smita. Shame we haven't got autopilot, I think, maybe, to draw the airplane analogy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Brogden. I work in the leadership team here in the LDP, working with Keith and the team. Firstly, I should say I'm a bit of an interloper. It should be Lewis Hall, our delivery lead, delivering this presentation. He's doing all the hard work around M10 readiness. But his wife is going in for twins tomorrow, so discretion is the better part of valour, and he thought the day before she goes in might be a good time to take a day off. So to follow on from Smitha and Keith and everyone, 26 weeks to go live, less than 6 months, 183 calendar days. Only 126 working days until we go live. It really is becoming very real. And as Smith has said, it's not just go live, it's ELS, it's qualification, it's migration for everybody. And we do need those robust arrangements in place. And that's why, the messaging for today is we can't just look at what's in front of our noses for testing. We have to look right to left, look at what we need for go live and ensure that we have the robust arrangements in place. So we've very much been pivoting in the programme to look at what's needed for go live, what that journey looks like for all of you as participants through go live and through qualification and through migration, which is why we've got the presentations later today. Because the worst thing would be to get to M10 and suddenly realise, actually we needed this in place 3 months ago. So we have to look at what preparatory activity we need to put in place now. And as Helen said with the open hand, we do have our Go Live implementation group. It is helping us get to grips with some of those day-to-day discussions to ensure that we're getting ready for M10. And we must remember it's not just about those participants who have volunteered and are helping us in SIT. It is about the central parties. It is about the DNOs and IDNOs. It is about legacy changes for suppliers and agents to support migration and reverse migration. Some of our colleagues will talk about that a bit later as well. We need everyone ready and everyone play their part. And it's great to see so many people online and so many people in the room. I was talking to a couple of people over tea, and it's actually really nice just to see people in person and not just faces on screens. So if I talk a little bit about what we're doing with M10 readiness. And it is very easy in a complex program of this nature to focus in and fix on what's in front of you. We have lots of complex issues, lots of significant pieces of work we need to do to keep that momentum in testing. But what we are now looking at is what are those outcomes we need to be able to go live, and what do we need to run the market-wide half-hourly arrangements successfully, as Smith has set out. And we did set some criteria some time ago for what good looks like at M10. So we have an M10 cutover plan. We have a set of M10 acceptance criteria that we approve through governance. So you all helped us pull together with that. And now is the time for us to hold ourselves to account for delivery against those criteria, and also help all of you as participants be ready and do your part so that we can get through that process. And what we're going to do today is just show how we're going to do that as a programme. I am focusing on the programme activity, but obviously we can't do it without all of you, and you're an integral part of meeting those criteria. So what we're doing at the moment, as we approach M10, is we are tracking our readiness and preparedness for go live very closely. And we're doing that against those acceptance criteria that we've agreed through programme governance and with you all. So it is a collaborative activity, and we'll talk quite a lot about collaboration. We have already today, and we'll continue to do so. And we need to be confident that we're ready to turn those new central systems on. And so, as we talked about, we are shifting from that test execution towards operational readiness transition. And what I'll do in these slides just show how we're tracking and monitoring progress. And the mechanisms are working. So we are identifying those risks and issues now that we're taking that right to left approach. So there's been a couple of mentions of service management. Obviously that is an extremely important body of work to put in place, and taking that right to left approach has enabled us to highlight some of these risks early and take preventative action. And the last item in there is looking at building confidence in readiness. I'll talk a bit about that in the next slide. But we are doing that by looking at where we think we should be, and addressing where we are and working with the IPA to ensure we have that independent view to give you confidence that we don't have misplaced confidence. So when it comes to building confidence, we're on this journey from where we are now, down in the bottom left-hand corner of this diagram, moving towards the September M10 date, and looking at how we instill confidence in the programme that we can meet that date. We have a couple of key points through that process, M10 checkpoints that we put in place for April PSG, as I mentioned earlier, with that report on the checkpoint. So that will be coming out tomorrow. And then we have a second checkpoint in July. We discussed that with the Ofgem team and the IPA as to where it might be best positioned to have a second checkpoint. And broadly, you can see it's broadly in that gap between April and September. And what the checkpoints do is they give us a formal reporting mechanism to transparently report against where we are against those acceptance criteria, where we think we should be, and ensuring that we're on target to hit that M10. And again, importantly, with a review from the IPA to ensure we're not kidding ourselves here on where we're going. But it isn't just about those checkpoints. We are constantly updating and monitoring against those acceptance criteria. We have monthly PSGs, and the programme steering group, by its nature, is holding us to account for delivery. So whilst we have these key checkpoints, that's not all we're doing. It is a progressive assurance towards M10. And it is a large, complex programme. And I think Helen highlighted earlier, it's the unknowns that are going to get us. So the more monitoring that we put in place, the more likely we are to find those risks and issues and be able to do something about it. And whilst the checkpoints give us those formal review points, that constant monitoring also makes sure that we don't sleepwalk into problems that we might find later down the line. And having that formal set of M10 acceptance criteria gives us the outcomes and the metrics to measure against. So it is important for us to ensure that those are complete and to ensure that that we are meeting those acceptance criteria as the key success. I think that's probably what I was going to say against this slide. I'm now reminding myself of what's written down, not just my commentary. So how are we doing this? So we are doing this by looking at our M10 acceptance criteria and putting the tracking mechanism in place that shows what each of these are. Now, we've talked quite a lot about testing today because that's what we're doing. They are the first two criteria in here, but this is just an example of what we're doing. So evidence-based assessment, as you would expect. So we've got milestones, we've got the evidence we expect, we've defined what we think good looks like at M10, and then we assess what our progress is against that. And there's a set of updates and assessments that enables us to make a red, amber, green assessment against the outcome. And then in addition to that, we have the IPA checking that our assessments are a fair reflection of where we are. And we picked the first two acceptance criteria here. They are tested ones, but we do have a full suite of outcomes set out for M10. So it includes testing, qualification, data, migration, transition, and planning. So we're focused on outcomes for all of those constituent elements for the journey for you through M10 and to live operation, where we also have that sort of programmatic planning and structural element as well to it. So it is important to say that. And I think the other thing I was reflecting on when I was looking at these slides, and Lewis and I talked about, and again, Keith mentioned it earlier, this is all transparent. So we are reporting to PSG. You get those reports on a monthly basis. You can see where we think we are against the outcomes. And we will, of course, publish the M10 checkpoint reviews as well. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible with all of you. And we would welcome feedback. If you think we're kidding ourselves and there are some real risks and issues that sit behind our M10 readiness, please do tell us, because we need to know. So again, this is all in the nature of collaboration and why we have set up the Go Live implementation group to hopefully get that collaboration and that dialogue going with all of you as participants, so that we find where turn those unknowns into knowns, so that we can do something about it. So this is where I get caught out by Lewis's animation. I did run through this beforehand. So yeah, we have a series of activities that we're undertaking between now and Go Live. We've got the M10 checkpoint, as I said, that'll be reported tomorrow for assessment at PSG next Wednesday. Early life support. So the early life support model has been subject to consultation, and I think it's another really good example of collaborative development. We had over 300 comments on the latest consultation for the early life support model, which could be considered as, oh my God, you've got 300 comments on the early life support model. That's not quite how we view it. We think it's really important, and it's an indication of the collaborative nature of the development of that. It might not feel safe for the team with the hard work of trudging through all those 300 comments, but it has improved what we've set out. So that's why we consult, that's why we collaborate. Right? So the early life support model, we're expecting to complete that and get through consultation, but it's really important to ensure we have the right assurance mechanisms for hypercare and early life support. Migration framework, again, Robin will probably cover more about this later, but again, very well established, consulted on numerous times, and we're really starting to see some stability in that migration framework now with the iterations of the schedule. And obviously the schedule and the migration framework is what gives us confidence that we can hit that M15 milestone. Non-set LDSO testing complete. It's not without its risks, but we are on target currently to complete non-set LDSO testing in the middle of May. We need all the LDSOs there. As they know, I'm going to look at them now when I'm in the eyes. But as we all know, we need all the LDSOs there at go live because we need all customers to have MHHS arrangements available for those suppliers who are ready to go. So absolutely critical for us to continue to monitor and deliver against that non-set LDSO testing. There's a second checkpoint for M10 there, as I've already talked about. And contributing into that, we have Readiness Assessment 5 and 6, which is due to go out at the end of April. And that gives us the opportunity to gather information on all of your readiness and to help feed into those assessment criteria that feed into the M10 checkpoint. So I think we're trying to share that information in advance of it coming out so people have a heads up on what's coming out on the readiness assessment. But that will contribute into the M10 checkpoint in the same timing for the July PSG. We then have cutover plans, and we are coming out to, we are asking central parties for their cutover plans. And this is, it is important to note these are cutover plans, it's not program plans. What we want is some confidence that central parties have well-defined activities to go through those cutover activities that are required around M10, because there are some detailed activities that actually we need them to technically implement over the M10 period. So that isn't a generic request for plans, that is a specific request for plans for cutover to give us confidence that we can execute that process. Again, it's just building that confidence for the execution of go live. SIP functional migration regression complete. Yay. That is on target. It wasn't deliberately green on here, I don't think, because that's just their testing milestone, but it is on target. What we are looking at with SIP functional and SIP migration, as well as we've got qualification activities in here as well, we're looking at what we can do with the code bodies around the completion of regression, how we can ease some of the risks around large quantities of participants coming through the qualification and the PAV and the REC code manager side for qualification. Because it could be, we need all the LDSOs, it could be we have all the LDSOs, all of the SIP participants already at around the same time or at the same time. So we are looking at how we might be able to mitigate against the risks of large volumes of parties coming through the qualification process at the same time. So that is something, again, by looking right to left, we can identify where some of the risks are and what action we might be able to take to mitigate against that. Test completion report. We've talked about service management arrangements. They need to be in place in advance of go live, because we do need those service management arrangements in earlier. Then we move through some of the technical activities around DIP portal and certificates, confirmation for who we need for go live through qualification, and then we run through the service activation process, which is post-qualification participants getting their production certificates, getting ready to communicate with the DIP, and also us updating the ISD so that we have the right effective dates for the participants who come through qualification and everything rolls out to all participants. Then we go into MCAG governance, no go, no go. Then we have M8. M8 is an important, probably the most important date, to be honest. I'm hoping Andrew's going to smile when I say that, because M8 is actually when the systems go live. The code goes live and the system goes live on the same day, on that Monday. We do have M10 afterwards at the moment, as it's set out in the M10 cutover plan, but that is really seen as a rubber stamping exercise through our governance processes. M8 is when the systems go live and when the code changes go live. So that's when participants will be complying with the new rules. Don't think I dropped a ball going through the animation, so that's good. Hopefully it gives you a bit of a picture of how we've been. I know it went left to right, but we have been thinking about this right to left. And then, as always in industry programs, we have to think about governance and decision making. We have formal governance processes where we need to go through the M10 process. And as in the previous slide, the key decisions are at MCAG, at our migration and cutover advisory group. That is actually fed in with with recommendation from the Code Advisory Group to ensure that M8 arrangements are ready and live. We then go into that cutover window, and then PSG confirm M10 on the Wednesday after M8 when the systems go live. But all of these advisory groups are contributing into that decision making for purposes of qualification, for the testing, the test condition reports. They then go into MCAG and ultimately PSG. And the GLIG, the Go Live Implementation Group, is actually probably the most important group in all of these. It's not a governance group. It's not part of the formal decision making. But that's the engine room of where we want to try and drive out that collaboration, identify where the risks and issues are in the run up to go live, and this works best if we all work together through groups like the GLIG in order to drive that out. And I think that's me done with my slides. Hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into how we're approaching this, what we're doing, and the timelines for the approach to go live. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to the IPA for the next time. Is that okay for you?